Welcome to the virtual tour of Trondheim, Norway. Get your popcorn ready because we're about to go on a journey through Trondheim to find out what this place has to offer and what life is like in T-Town. Towards the end, we'll even get to hear what some random people on the street have to say about the city. Trondheim is the third largest city in Norway, with a population of 200,000, located in about the center of the nation where the country becomes narrow. Notice the shape of our city center and how it is formed by the river. According to my elementary school teacher back in the day, Trondheim was chosen by Vikings as a place to settle down because there was a great defensive advantage since you only had to defend this narrow opening to protect the entire city within. Our journey starts here. This place right here is called Utsikten. It literally means the view, and I think you can understand why, as it is indeed quite a great view of the city. Nidelva is the name of the river that runs through the city and looks like this. We have quite a few bridges crossing the river at these different locations. We have Stavnebru, Ceciliebrua next to the hospital, Nidareid or Ilabro, Gangbrua, Elgseterbru, Gamlebybro, Bakkebru, and Verftsbrua or Blomsterbrua. If you're into statues for whatever reason, we have a few of them, but not too many. We seem to like our churches, despite Norway being among the least religious countries in the world, and in the city center of Trondheim we have three somewhat large churches. Ilen kirke, Vår Frue kirke, and of course probably the number one tourist stop of Trondheim, Nidaros domkirka, the Nidaros Cathedral. Right next to the cathedral, we have a big, nice green area called Marina. This is a pretty large area, nicely situated right by the river, comes equipped with some cannons, and usually during summer there's at least one festival that takes place here. We have plenty of little parks and green areas spread out all over Trondheim. Here are a few that I came across while gathering footage for this video. This part right here is called Øya, which means the island, even though it's actually more of a peninsula or half island. It has a rather large building called Trondheim Spektrum, which is Europe's largest multi-purpose indoor arena, housing sporting events and concerts. Right next to it, we have the outdoor Trondheim Stadion, which as you can see is an athletic field. This is our hospital, St. Olav's Hospital, which is situated quite central, just a short distance from the city center. It has this fancy colorful fountain which looks a bit cooler at night. The hospital has a helipad on top of one of its buildings next to the river for ambulance helicopters. Every now and then you will see or at least hear helicopters flying around. We don't have a metro or subway, but we do have a few tunnels that make it faster for vehicles to navigate the city. We have plenty of buses however, and they look something like this. Something nice about our buses is that they run on hydrogen and release only half of the pollution that gasoline does. We also have a tram, known locally as Trikken, which travels back and forth along this path, from the Lake Lian to the center of downtown. The name of this track is Gråkalbanen, which translates to something like the old grey dude track. It runs on 100% renewable electricity. Lian is a great summer hangout place, along with Skivatnet, which is nearby. We have city bikes, which you can use an app to grant you 60 minutes of use at a time. And since last year, we also have these electric scooters, which you also pay for by using an app. These things are literally everywhere now. The very center of Trondheim is Torvet, or Torget, meaning the square. It's this big square which previously was a roundabout, but recently has been changed to become a pedestrian square. The center of this square has this big obelisk and a statue of Olav Tryggvason on top. He was the king of Norway a little more than 1,000 years ago and the founder of Trondheim in year 997. Apparently between his legs there lays a head of a slave that murdered the previous ruler of Norway. And yes, we have seagulls in Trondheim. Quite a few actually. Right by Torget is Trondheim Torg, a large shopping mall and looks something like this. Nordre Gate is probably the most pedestrian-heavy street in the city. There aren't too many people out these days though, of course, because of the whole pandemic situation. At the very end of Nordre, we reach this area which I like to call the Nightlife Square or the Club Square. Most of the city's bars and clubs are situated right here, and at nighttime this area can be pretty packed with people. This building is called Stiftsgården and is the royal residence of Trondheim, so this is where the king and queen and fam like to chill when they come to Trondheim. Turns out that this is one of the largest wooden buildings in Northern Europe. Behind this building there is a tiny park with a fountain, and this statue of this guy with a bird crapping on his head is our former king. This building is Trondheim's city hall called Rådhuset. And down the street we have Trondheim Tinghus, which translates to Thing House, and is our district court. Here are some of the more interesting looking buildings that I found for you guys while gathering footage for this video. We don't really have much public street art in Trondheim, but at least we have these two murals which I found in the Ila neighborhood. Like most of Norway, Trondheim is a pretty clean place. I even found this little wooden sign on a tree which asks you to keep Trondheim clean and pick up the trash that you find. This is a marina called Ravnkloa, literally translated to the Raven Claw, and features a fish store and seafood restaurant with the same name. This is also where you can get on a boat and go visit Munkholmen. Munkholmen is an islet out on the Trondheim fjord. Historically, it has been used as a place of execution, a monastery, a fortress, and a prison, but these days it's used for recreational and tourist purposes, featuring a little beach, a kiosk, and a restaurant. This is Gamla Bybro, literally meaning Old City Bridge. It's a nice looking bridge and somewhat of a tourist attraction because, well, this is the view from the bridge. This area across the bridge is called Bakklandet and has old colorful buildings packed next to each other and with cobblestone roads. Right down the path from Gamla Bybro we have our famous Trampe bike lift, one of the few existing bike elevators in the entire world. It used to cost money, but I discovered that it's actually free now, although it seems to be out of order at the moment due to the pandemic. The elevator takes us into the direction of Kristiansten Festning. Festning means fortress. It comes equipped with a sturdy looking black and white building which is more than 300 years old, a separate building which is a restaurant and cafe, and a bunch of cannons. Several times a year you can hear the cannons firing away in consecutive fashion. One of those days being June 7th, which marks the end of our union with Sweden in 1905. We do it also to remind Sweden that we have cannons, just in case they were up to something. Solsiden literally means the sun side, and it's basically a neighborhood with a canal of sorts. It has a shopping mall, a bunch of restaurants and nightlife venues, and apartment buildings on the other side. We also have a store called Titt. This is Trondheim Sentralstasjon, or Trondheim S, and is, as the name suggests, our central train station. This relatively new office building across from the train station is covered in solar panels and allegedly produces more energy than it consumes. It's called the Powerhouse. Ooh. Close to that we have Rockheim, which is a rock music museum, and the top of it looks kind of cool as it lights up in different colors and animated patterns. So I came back at night to check it out and see the colors, but it's just too freaking bright to see any lights. I'm not even sure if it's turned on during summer right now, but during winter it looks pretty cool. Not far from that we have Bymarka, which is Norway's largest indoor swimming hall and is situated right next to the sea, giving a pretty cool view through its glass exterior. So Trondheim is filled with students, and it's mainly because of this place, NTNU, which stands for Norges Teknisk Naturvitenskapelige Universitet, the Norwegian University of Science and Technology. The campus is pretty sizable. There's a large park or green area next to it, and on the other side there's a big soccer field called Dødens Dal, which means Death's Valley. Close to the university there's this red building called Studentersamfunnet. It's basically a hangout place for students, run by students, and the building contains many different rooms equivalent to bars, clubs, a cafe, and also a restaurant. If you were to study in Trondheim, there's a good chance you'd end up in one of the several student villages or student housing buildings that we have, and they look something like this. These are some examples of apartment buildings. These are the older block types, while here are some more modern ones. And this is what a typical neighborhood looks like. Traditionally, the houses look kinda like this, with the angled roof, while a lot of the newer and more modern houses look like this, with the brown wooden exterior and flat roof. Here's another contrasting example. We have the traditional, and then we have the modern. We have a football stadium called Lerkendal Stadion, which is the second biggest in the country, and Rosenborg is the name of Trondheim's football team. This is Ladehammer, which is basically a hill somewhat northeast of the city center. There's a big sculpture that looks like a T or a big nail, and here you'll also find a pretty great view of the city. Nearby is the start of Ladestien, which is basically a trail that goes along the edge of the water. On the path, you'll find this huge funnel of sorts facing Munkholmen. It makes for a great picture if you want to get into the funnel. A bit further on the path, we arrive at Korsvika, which is essentially Trondheim's beach. It's a little sad, I know, but it's better than having nothing. The trail offers great views of the fjord as we continue to reach Ladekaia, which is an establishment that serves food and beverages. Now let's check out this place, which I really enjoyed, Kuhaugen, which means the cow hill. It's up on this hill and the view is really spectacular, with the fjord and mountains in the back and the city in the foreground. As you can see, I wasn't the only person enjoying this view. The next object of interest is big and hard, and you can spot just the tip from almost anywhere in the city. It is the one and only Tyholt-tårnet, the Tyholt Tower. At 124 meters tall, this bad boy is the tallest building in Norway. Its purpose is as a signal broadcaster, but it also features a revolving restaurant which makes a complete rotation every hour. Needless to say, the view ain't too shabby up here. Another somewhat touristy hotspot is the Sverresborg Folkemuseum, dedicated to showcasing life in Trondheim way back in the day. It even maintains these very old constructions, examples of early Norwegian housing. Not far from the museum, we have Byåsen Butikksenter, a little shopping center. And this is where Bymarka begins, a huge nature reserve. Teisendammen, the Teisen Dam, forms a lake just a few minutes away. This is a great place to hang out, have a swim, and even enjoy this nice view. There's also a golf course here, but only fancy people are allowed. A bit further up from Teisendammen, we find Baklidammen, which is really beautiful. Bymarka contains anthills, some animals, streams, and tiny bridges, and is both mountainous and with plenty of vegetation. If you don't know much about Norwegians, know this: they love their nature, and so tons of people frequently come up to Bymarka to go on hikes, runs, bike, cross-country ski, and just enjoy themselves in Mother Nature. Now let's see what some random strangers on the street have to say about Trondheim. Is Trondheim a nice place to live?
Ja, absolutt.
Ja, det synes jeg. Jeg har bodd i Trondheim av og på siden 1991. Jeg har trivdes veldig godt.
What is the best thing about living in Trondheim?
It's a mix of nature and modernity.
En del fine gamle staselige bygg og fin natur rundt. En ganske kompakt by og breie gater som sjeldent i Norge.
Det hyggelige folk. Jeg synes at det en by der man får litt følelse av at det ikke en stor by, men det har fortsatt tilgang til alt.
It's kind of small city and you can still find everything here. There's also a lot of opportunities to find really cool places.
I like the dialects.
What is the worst thing about living in Trondheim?
If you hate to be in a real quiet place, yeah, maybe here is not the place because it's really calm, quiet.
It's too quiet.
Yeah, it's too quiet.
All right.
Været. Ikke i dag, da. I dag det fint. Trafikken. Nei, det vanskelig å skjønne seg på kjøremønstret.
Okay.
Nå kommer jeg fra en veldig liten plass der jeg kunne en vei. Så det ikke så rart.
Well, during the winter actually, where there's very quiet season and it's very cold, so people just want to go home after work and there is no people in the city.
What's it like being a student in Trondheim?
Det veldig bra. Det kjempegodt studentmiljø.
Masse å finne på. Fritidsaktiviteter, sporter, quiz en stor greie, og veldig godt tilrettelagt for et godt sosialt miljø, vil jeg si.
I met a lot of international students here, so I really like it. I really like meet new people with some different cultures.
Is it worth visiting Trondheim?
Ja. Ja, definitivt. Det hjertet I Norge.
Ja, absolutt.
Det synes jeg absolutt. Det vel en av de fineste byene vi har I Norge.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think so. In the summertime.
Here we're back to where we started, at Utsikten. Only now it's midnight instead of the middle of the day. This is one of the coolest things about Trondheim. During summer, it simply doesn't get dark. The sun goes down around 11 and pops up again just a few hours later around 3 a.m. I feel like pictures and video never truly do it justice. The sight really is beautiful. I should probably tell you though that we have the opposite during winter. Just a few hours of sunlight and the rest is pitch black. We basically live in the dark ages every winter. But it makes the summer light just that much more enjoyable because you really appreciate it. Let's check out a bit of the city, and again, this is all filmed at midnight. On a Friday night like this one, the club square would usually be filled with people partying and drinking, but during our current corona times, it's kind of a sad sight, with more than half the venues closed. I managed to find some old footage though, which gives a more accurate image of what the nightlife can look like. And this about wraps up our little virtual tour of Trondheim. I hope you enjoyed it. If you're interested in Norway and the Norwegian language, this channel is dedicated to teaching basic Norwegian, so feel free to check out my other videos. And I'll leave you guys here with this view of the nighttime summer sky of Trondheim.